Because it's summer, Martin sent out a message saying that if you are a driver that works 6 days and then you're off 1 day, or you're a driver that works 5 days and then you're off 2 days, or if you're a 5-2, 5-3 driver like me, you have to do certain extra amounts of shifts if you want some additional incentive pay of $250. And so you could do like an extra shift or two, depending on how many days the week you already work. The interesting thing to me about that is that means that there's a lot of extra drivers needed to be in trucks. There's a lot of trucks that are down right now and in maintenance for one reason or another. So the trucks that are normally in my group, I'm not always able to get one of those. They have to put me in a different truck every now and then. And on Monday, the very first truck I was assigned, it was one that was not part of my group. It was one of the newer ones that I looked at it on the app and it said, it was one of the newer ones. And I went there to the office and I asked them for a key to it. And they had no keys to that truck, so I wasn't able to take that one out. So they had to put me into a different truck. So it was kind of one of those things where, they don't have all the trucks, all the keys they need to for the trucks. And they say this because people leave with them or they just wander away with them and they don't come back with them. The thing is, though, I have been assigned trucks before. And if I turn in my key at the end of my 5 days, I then am in the same group. I have to then get another key and they're not labeled. They're not numbered or anything like that. So then I have to go through and find the right key. And then they'll say, well, just go out to the truck and then bring back the other ones that don't work for it. I don't want to end up going there and back and there and back. If I'm using the same truck every single day, the same truck, the key is going to work on all of them. I'm just going to hold on to that one. I've had the same key now for almost 4 months. And it's a lot easier than me having to go out there every few days and check the trucks to see if it's going to, work with one of these keys and go through an entire bin full of keys because they're not numbered properly or not labeled properly and then take it back in there. Anyway, the truck that they finally assigned me, it was a newer one with a digital dash and stuff. And that truck, it was not like the other one where it was constantly beeping and really, really annoying. It was annoying for its own reason. And it was basically because the left lane, if you were driving straight down the road, it had a left indicator, a light that, normally if you're starting to go on the curb, it will go beep, 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 and inform you that you're riding on the curb and it will light up on the left-hand side. It's also an indicator that it may start recording. So that way they can track your movements or whatever, and see if you're riding if they could look and see if you're on your phone, they'll see a reflection of the glass in the because it's dark outside, and they'll see a reflection of your screen in the mirror, in the window, which is a mirror basically at night. And that's when they're going to be able to say, well, you were distracted. Me, that's never an issue for me. I don't use my phone like that, while I'm driving. So they'll never see me, with my phone or something like that. Just driving down the road. Anyway, so driving down the road straight, and all of a sudden it goes beep, 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 beep. And I'm like, I'm not on the curb. Beep, 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 beep. I'm like, what's going on? It must be seeing like a crack in the ground or something like that. Anyway, it was occasionally beeping. It wasn't anything like it was before. Anyway, so I was assigned, this was my first day of the week. I was assigned a Waynesboro, Statesboro, and then a Grovetown 4 a.m. store. Even when I told the female planner was in the office covering for people because, it's summer and people are going to take time off. And so other people in the office have to cover. And the female planner was in the office. And when I said, yeah, third stop is a Grovetown 4 a.m., she goes, ew. So even she knew that was a rough one. But anyway, so by the time I got the key, by the time I got in a truck that was actually had a key to it and stuff like that, because people are working additional shifts to try to get that incentive pay and stuff, I'm not able to get the trucks that are in my group all the time. So I'm being put in other trucks sometimes. So that's the reason why. But it takes a while sometimes to get through with things. And I'll tell you this also. Resetting the trip odometer, it doesn't work unless the truck is running. If it's just in the on position, it doesn't do it. Same thing as on the OmniTrax. If you try to go to yard move, it will not go to yard move unless you have the engine running. So I'd have to turn the engine on and make it run. So it's basically just burning up fuel in order for me to go into yard move, which is kind of annoying. And it's the first time I've seen that on trucks. It's the newer trucks. They need to change that so you can turn it into yard move as long as the truck is in the on position. That way, even if it's not cranked, you don't have to have it cranked in order to be in yard move. A trip odometer also is very difficult for you to reset unless if you try to do it without the truck running. You try to do it just in regular yard, in regular on, it won't do it. It will just sit there and resist, but it does it fine as soon as the truck's running. So again, another thing that you have to be idling to do. I went in early, because I've been doing that lately, going in, doing an early pre-trip and getting situated and settled into the truck and that kind of stuff. But on this particular day, all that time got chewed up with me having to trade trucks, because they didn't have a key, and then get me a key and let me go out there and try it. And this key didn't work, and this key, I have to bring these back and whatever. So finally, it took me 50 minutes to get out of there after 7. Normally, I'm able to get out of there by about 7:20. Took me the extra half hour because of all the fiasco. One of the things that's interesting to me, though, is the Omnitracks on this truck sucked. It was the worst Omnitracks I've seen. You would sit there and press the button over and over and over again, and it wouldn't make the beep noise. It would not go do, 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 a little tap, 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 tap noise. I'm sitting there trying to enter my temperatures, 40 degrees, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4. It's not going through. 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4. It's not going through. And then finally it would jump in there as 4. And finally, I don't know what the deal was. I don't know if the screen was just broken, needs to be replaced. If it was dirty, it can't be dirty because I actually wiped it down at one point. But another thing that would do is I would press 4 over and over again doing this, and then suddenly it would jump to like 7. It would enter 7. I'm like, that's not what I was doing. So then I'd have to hit the backspace button until it went through, and then I could enter it again. So all in all, most of the time I spent in that truck trying to get situated and stuff like that was making the Omnitrack system work because it was delayed. It took sometimes, 4, 5, 6 seconds for me to get one button pressed before I can move on. I was about to punch that thing. It was so annoying. And I tell you that the keyboard just needs some work. Anyway, I got to Waynesboro. That was my first stop. And it was right as the frozen dairy truck was leaving. So I pulled in there and I saw he turned on his lights. And I'm like, what are you doing here? There's nobody ever here. But then as I saw him pulling out, he was driving a Walmart reefer. He was not he was not a Martin or a Walmart fleet driver. He was just a regular driver of some sort, like a owner operator or something like that. So I backed in and then went inside and they said, hey, the frozen dairy guy just left you. I'm like, okay. Well, he's like, so we're going to have frozen dairy and meat and produce all done. So it's going to be great. We won't have to worry about you all the rest of the night. I'm like, hey, look at that. Aim to please. And Waynesboro went fine. I got to Statesboro. It was a neighborhood market. It was slow. But the guy was nice and he had to run the pallets. Normally the neighborhood markets, they just have to run the pallets around the corner. He was nice. I knew that I wasn't going to get a second load this night anyway, because Waynesboro and Statesboro, and then having that 4 a.m. Grovetown store, which is what my third stop was, is a 4 a.m. store. I can't get there until 4 a.m. It was going to be annoying. So it's the same 4 a.m. store that I went to 2 weeks ago and asked if they could, serve me early, because I got there like 3 hours early. And so when I got there to the Grovetown, I knocked on the door and rang the doorbell in the back, and it ended up being the same exact guy that was there before 2 weeks ago. And I was like, oh, this is great. So as soon as he saw me, he just moved out of the way and I walked right on in, and it was like, sure, come on in. I'll unload you. Didn't say a word. I greeted him and stuff like that. He didn't say a word, and he unloaded me and I was done. That was just after 3 a.m. So just after 3 a.m., it was like 3:03. And, I was completely, it was being unloaded, which was really nice. And, the biggest frustration I had about that entire day was the Omnitrax. It was constantly beeping. It was changing things on its own. It was changing the temperatures on me, which means that I'm sending an email because I would look at it and say 40, 40, 40, 30, 30, 30, 40, 40, 40. And I would say, okay, I'd hit next page. And then all of a sudden get a message pop up. A new important message has arrived. I'd look at it and it would say, your temps don't match. And I'm like, okay, here's the thing. On the load map, it will show me zone 1 temperature, zone 2 temperature, zone 3 temperature. If it doesn't match what's on the reefer, you're supposed to call the office and find out what the temperatures are supposed to be. But the thing is, though, the load map is almost always right. And it almost always is going to jive with what the reefer says. It always has, every single time. If it doesn't go through, if I get that warning message that says it's wrong, it's because I entered the temperatures as it's listed on the load map and on the reefer, and for whatever reason it's entered in the system wrong. So I know it's in the system wrong because I can look at the load map and it has the number and it will say next to it P for produce, so it should be 40 degrees, or M for meat, and I know it should be 30 degrees. As long as I know the load map looks this way and it matches what's on the reefer, I'm going to go on. I don't care. And it's not because I don't care about the temperatures. It's because I don't care to stop what I'm doing, call the office just for them to tell me what I already know. Every single time I've called the office, they're like, "Oh yeah, it's fine. Go on." So I'm like, "Okay, well, if it's always fine, then I've done this long enough to know that if it's meat and produce, then I know weight wise. You can also feel the truck differently if the meat's all the way in the back or all the way in the front. So anyway, that was that. Between that and the left lane warning thing was just plain annoying. Anyway, that was it, because after I finished there unloading, it was like almost 3:30, and by the time I got back to Atlanta, it was going to be too late for me to get another load for the day. So it was about 6 a.m. and I got out of there about 6:30. So that was my Monday. On Tuesday, I was assigned Greenville, 2 stops in Greenville, and then Travelers Rest, and then a second run of Snellville. I don't like it when I'm assigned a second run and it's a Sam's Club. The reason why is because they don't open the door at 4. They open it sometime after that. There's almost always somebody there that you got to compete with at the docks. And it's just, and they have to, their forklifts are fast, but they have to run them to the far side of the building. And it's extremely inefficient. It needs to be where they have 2 people in the docks. One person pulls them off and runs it part of the way, and then the other person picks it up the rest of the way and runs it back. That way, we're not spending all day there. You still got the same workload. Like, it doesn't matter if one driver spends an hour and 15 minutes unloading me and then goes back to doing whatever they're doing normal. And if there's, and the other person is over there has to spend like an hour on an assignment, that person could take 45 minutes or whatever of their time or whatever and help me, because that means that this other driver would free up and they could both tag team that stuff. So anyway, for whatever reason, I guess that's just not a Sam's Club policy. It's just so annoying from a driver perspective when our clocks are going. Anyway, though, I got into a new truck in my group that I hadn't been in a while, but I haven't driven this truck before. It was fine. That time I was out by 7:25. And when I got to my first stop in Greenville, you have to pull in next to a Quick Trip and go past the Quick Trip to the neighborhood markets, loading docks. There ended up being a Quick Trip truck that was parked with his gate down in the back because he was unloading into the Quick Trip. And so I was like, oh, great. So luckily he was just about to pull up his gate. So he pulled up the gate, he closed up his door, and he was out in like 3 or 4 minutes. And that was great. I was done. And then I was to the neighborhood market. Interestingly enough, though, there was a Walmart fleet driver there who had a frozen dairy truck there. So just kind of like the day before, there was a frozen dairy. I was only waiting 10 minutes for him, though, because in the dock. I went inside and they said, oh, yeah, we're unloading frozen dairy and we'll be done here in a couple of minutes. I'm like, okay. They were done very efficiently, so that was fine. When I got out of there and I backed in, they were already warmed up and they were already there. They knew that they had a second truck there, so they just stayed there. So after the fleet driver pulled out, the second he got back to his truck, he cranked it up and pulled forward, and I was able to back in. And they had me unloaded in 15 minutes. It was awesome. My second stop in Greenville is a neighborhood market, and it had never taken me. The GPS had never gone from. I've never gone from this Greenville to that Greenville before. And one of the things, it had this extremely sharp turn. And it was a sharp turn that was like this kind of an angle. Luckily, it was wide, but it had a left lane and then it had a right lane. And it split off like this with this big, huge area with a stripe across it. You know, you're not supposed to technically cross it, even though in a truck you're allowed to borrow some of that space to move. But I pulled forward and started to do a wide turn. And as I start to make the turn, I realize real quickly that is a very narrow road I'm pulling onto. And as soon as I get almost, I'm pulling onto that and I'm looking at the trailer in my rearview mirror. And I realize real quick that on the mirror that I'm about to hit the side railing. So I stop what I'm doing and I realize there's a car, but that car was on the exit ramp of the road. He is way back. He's like 100 feet back. He probably knew this turn and knew that I was going to end up having to go wide so he give me all the room. So since he was already there and I was already there, I went ahead and just backed up and I pulled all the way over to the right into the right-hand turn lane. And then I had enough room to do it and completely clear and never hit anything. But that was one of those things where I really appreciated the fact that someone wasn't right up on my tailpipe because I was able to actually back up. He must be a CMV driver or something like that and he looked at it and knew that I was going to be in trouble because I took it what I thought was wide enough, but I start to see that the road was more narrow. As soon as I'm on the approach, I'm looking at saying, oh, okay, well, I can make that turn. But as soon as I got up there, the GPS even said sharp turn. And as I got it up there, I was like, oh man, this is going to be really tight. And just because it's such a tight turn, I wasn't going to be able to make it. So I had to back up, which is fine. But yeah, it almost put me into the railing. And that smart driver back there gave me the room I needed. And then it was only like right around the corner from the neighborhood market that I was going to. And I passed by that intersection many times driving straight through it, as opposed to making a left turn onto the road. So that was fine. Aside from that, there was another interesting note about that neighborhood market, and that was that there was extra pallets on the truck. I'm a stickler about making sure that the stickers always match if it says meat or if it says produce. I always want to make sure that it matches the right section for temperature. And I also want to make sure that it matches the right store. And then I take the number and I always count it off. If it's a parent, it's going to be on my paperwork. If it's a child, I always note what the child number is that was on that particular pallet and put a 2 next to it. So that way, when I count up the total number of pallets that I should have versus the number of pallet stacks, I can see what that is. So like it may be that they're in 11 pallet positions, which means 11 stacks of pallets, but there's 14 total pallets. And so I should have 14 total stickers, because sometimes what they'll do is they'll put a pallet, stack another one on top of it, wrap it with stretch wrap, hopefully. And then that would be 2 pallets on 1 pallet stack. So that's the way it works. But in this particular occasion, I was unloading and the very first pallet was 2 stacked. And I looked at it and said, wait a second now. These pallets don't match any numbers that I have. I wonder if they're child's, but then they weren't in the same series. Normally it would be like 384, 3858, 386, 387, 388, 389, 390, 391, 392. And it would all be in the same thing. And then the next store would be like, 618, 617, 619, 624. And it might jump around a little bit, but it'll all be in the same little area. So that way, that this range is it. And then it could skip like 200 or 300 numbers by the time it gets up to the next one. So every section of the truck is sectioned differently, in the trailer rather. And so that was kind of cool. That's kind of cool because it allows us to look at it. But I ended up giving them, they were supposed to get 14 pallets and I had 16 for them. I confirmed all the store numbers. I confirmed every single pallet number was theirs. But these were additional 2 for that store. So I guess they were overages that weren't able to get onto another trailer. But either way, I told them, I said, you have all your stuff. And I made sure it didn't match any of my other, my last stop I was going to, and it didn't. So anyway, those 2 overage, they were fine because they got all their load. They were like, all right, well, we do have to fill out a form for the overage, but better to have too much than not enough. There's probably a lack of something from earlier anyway. Um, then I got to Traveler's Rest, and it being the same guy as it is most of the time that I go there, and it was very smooth. He's very, very good. He's smooth, and the funny thing is he has this electric pallet jack, and the very last time he went in there to grab the pallet, and he picks it up and starts to back it up, the pallet jack dies. So he turns it off for a second, turns it back on, and continues forward a few more feet. Then he turns it off, turns it back on, and he goes a few more feet. And then finally, it gets to the very, very edge where it's like it's got about one more foot before it gets onto the dock leveler, and it completely stalls. He turns it off for a couple moments, turns it back on, doesn't go. His only choice is to turn it to drop the pallet and to get a manual jack. So he had one of the younger kids do that. But anyway, that was so funny. The pallet jack died. It really wanted, I'm sure it really wanted to try to get all the way done. I wanted it too, but I had to wait a couple extra minutes. Anyway, so that was pretty much it. And I went back and picked up my second trailer. This trailer was interesting to me. It was going to Snellville. This trailer was creaking constantly. When I went in there and picked it up, it was creaking. And I'm like, what's it creaking about? And I kind of went underneath it to check the locking jaw had grabbed, it grabbed correctly, and it wasn't a high hook or anything like that. And it grabbed correctly when I hooked up to it. But it was creaking, and it would pop. And I'm like, what's that? Anyway, I got out of there with the trailer, but it was shifting. There was something inside that was creaking, and like it would shift. I would see the truck slightly move, and I'm like, or the trailer slightly move. I'm like, something's going on here. I don't know what's going on. This particular day, though, another interesting thing is that the one of the day shift ladies that works the day shift, and who normally knows that frozen dairy is not supposed to arrive before 9 a.m. She told me, this is a Sam's Club. It's a 4 a.m. store. Don't show up early. And I'm like, I can show up early. But, I wasn't going to tell her that. She's like, don't show up early. Do not show up early. I'm like, so it's okay. It's going to be fine. And I was like, I understand the rules. And so she's like, all right. So anyway, I headed out. I ended up getting there at about 3:35. 10 minutes later, a water semi pulled up. And about 10 minutes after that, another truck showed up. So I almost had competition there. But anyway, I got there. It took 15 minutes for the guy to let me in. Finally, when the guy let me in, his key wasn't working on the lock, so he couldn't open the gate. So he had to spend another 10 minutes to find a working key. Finally, he got that. He started unloading me. And I tell you, it took almost an hour and a half to unload me. I did not get out of there until 5:45 a.m. And I could just imagine being those other two drivers that were there like almost 2 hours waiting for the first one. And because he missed it by 10 minutes. That's the reason why I always want to arrive early. I got to arrive at these Sam's Clubs early. And if I don't, then it ends up being a huge hassle for me. I don't like doing the Sam's Clubs. I don't like them at all because I always end up arriving. They have to get their day going and start before they can come out there and let you in. And then they have to run to the other side of the building. So it's a major day killer. And then I end up driving back in rush hour. And so I really wish I could get a shorter run first and then a longer run. That way that I can do my drop before the store opens to everybody. Like if I did that Grovetown, I could arrive to Grovetown, do my drop by like 4:30 and then spend my next 2 hours driving back. That way I'm driving during that time. That way I can be farther out. That way I'm done with my second stop and I'm not sitting there waiting. It's a better utilization of time. And I really appreciate it a lot better. Anyway, I tell you, if I ever violate my clock again, it's going to be at one of these stupid Sam's Clubs because they just are not efficient. They just will not double team and tag team the loading and unloading. And very seldomly do they unload to the dock because they want to run it to the other side of the building. So it's annoying. My Wednesday, I had a Greenwood and then a North Augusta and then Aiken. Greenwood, I arrived there at 9:35 and was ringing the doorbell for a while. They never opened the door. So it was the first time I have had to run around that half a mile around to Greenwood and come in the door. Once I got in there, they had a new guy that were moving pallets. He had never done this before. He had done frozen dairy, but he had never done meat and produce. So I kind of had to give him the ropes on that. He was a very polite guy, very nice guy, but I still had to direct him. And there was a couple of things that he needed a little tweak on, but he was a nice guy. Anyway, so it's also interesting that was the second location in a row where there was an extra pallet for him. They had one overage. I hadn't run into any overages until this last week, and I had 2 days in a row where I had an overage, and all the stickers matched, everything matched, store number matched, but it was an overage. So I told the guy, and he was like, "Well, we got everything, so I'm good." I was like, "Okay, well, yeah, I also have an extra." So he's like, "All right, well, awesome. I'd rather have all of it and then an extra than not have it at all." I'm like, "Yep, absolutely." So anyway, I got to North Augusta and they had a whole team, so they moved fast. And then I got to Aiken and they were average. I mean, as long as my main goal is I always want to be waiting on them. I don't want them ever have to be waiting on me. So if they're pulling off pallets, I always do the stickers and I try to be faster than them. If they ever have to wait on me, it's because a pallet had their sticker against the wall and they start to pull it out, and I'll quickly grab the sticker, and they'll usually, if they see me reaching for it, they'll stop and then let me grab it, and then they go on. Or I'll follow the pallet off of the trailer because they're going to pull it out, and then they're going to pull out the pallet jack and come around from the other side to hook it a different way. Because there's one dimension that's 3.5 feet and one that's by 4. And what they have to do in order to get the pallets stacked on the trailer correctly is they have to stack them alternating like this, or they have to put all of them one way on one side of the truck and all of them on the other side the other way. And if they were all this way, that would be 8 feet. And then it wouldn't give him any overage. So it would basically cram up the side of a trailer. They would never get it there. If they were all this way, there's like a foot gap in between that could make it easy to topple. So they do it this way. So that way it's pretty tight and things are going to kind of hold against each other better. So, I mean, I get it. But anyway, so, that's my goal, is I always want to be waiting on them. They'll pull out a pallet. I'll grab the stickers and try to be done. I'll try to lift up the bulkhead so that way they're never waiting on me. That's always my goal. So if they're always waiting, if I'm always waiting on them, then they know that I'm being fast and efficient, and they'll usually speed up a little bit because of it. So it's kind of nice. So anyway, I'll tell you. This is another one of those days where I'm really less interested in accepting a Sam's Club job after it's about 2 a.m. Because by the time I get back there, I drop the trailer, post-trip it, go to the office, pick up my paperwork, pick up my new trailer, pre-trip it, and fuel it up. It's going to be another hour. And then by the time I get to the other location, it's going to be close to 4 a.m. And then I'm going to have competition, and it's going to be people there. So anyway, it's annoying. It takes so long to get this thing moving, and then it takes so long to get unloaded at a Sam's Club. It's just really, really annoying. I really am not interested in going to a Sam's Club if it's after 2. I really want to try to expedite, get everything done as quick as I possibly can, so that way I can get out and get on the road, so that way I can get there early, because I really don't want to have to wait on people. Another thing is, you've heard me say in the past that they're constantly making changes about, their policies and stuff like that. One of them was about following distance. And they said that if you're on the platform science tablet, if you're within 4 seconds of someone, the system's going to start recording, and you're going to potentially get in trouble and have to talk to a manager if you're following too closely, too routinely. Here's the thing. The adaptive cruise control on every truck I've ever been on wants to stop accelerating and moving up on a truck or car in front of it once it hits 2 seconds. It will literally accelerate until it gets to 2 seconds, then it will stop accelerating. If you're going to be firm, Martin, about this whole 4 seconds thing, then you should work to get the cruise control changed so that way we are the adaptive cruise control does not go within 4 seconds, because put it in cruise control for the fuel efficiency. And then all of a sudden I find myself slowly catching up on another truck, and I see myself going below 4 seconds, 3.9, 3.8. I'm like, oh, great. If I was on platform science, I know that they'd be recording me and probably having a talk with me. So I end up gently tapping the brake or hitting the cancel button, coasting back down, and then accelerating again, or I change lanes. But the adaptive cruise control needs to be made so that way it will not violate your own policies. That's my opinion. I'm going to stick to it. Anyway, so my job was Thursday was Central, then Clemson, then Seneca, then Athens. It's a 4 a.m. Athens store. Then a Tucker, Georgia stop. So this is South Carolina. What's annoying to me is it's 4 stops. And the fourth stop is a 4 a.m. store. And it's that 4 a.m. Athens location that has that really slow lady. They supposed to open up at 4. She didn't get there until 4:15. She sleeps in the parking lot or something like that. She comes in at 4:15. They'll open up the door. Then she futzes around and bosses people around and greets people and then gets all the paperwork and organizes it. Then she's ready to start at like 4:30, and she's the slowest person in the world with the pallet jack. And then she'll start to pull things off, and then she'll stop and walk away from it for a moment and then come back. So by the time I would be done with her and get out of there, it'd be almost 5. By the time I'd get back to the office, it'd be like 6 something. And then I'm supposed to disconnect the trailer, pick up a new trailer, and get out of there by, let's just say, if I'm able to get out of there by 7 a.m., I'm supposed to be able to get there, drop off, and get back. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. Best case scenario on these kinds of days when I have a 4 a.m. store is I get out of there by 4:45. I get back to the office by just after 5. By the time I get dropped and hooked and whatever and get out of there, it's about 6. By the time I drive to the place, it's going to be, even if it's not too far away, if it's like 30 miles, it's going to be morning rush hour traffic. It's going to be 7 a.m. and it's going to take them an hour and 15 minutes at least to unload. And then it's going to be driving back in rush hour. I can't make it. So when I was assigned this, I said, I have a concern that I'm not going to be able to make it to that Tucker store. I said, would you assign me something else? And they were just like, nope, this is your job. I'm like, okay, well, I'm concerned. So I went in early, to try to get things done, because I knew that if I could get done early, then I would have a chance. But the problem that I ran into is that the Athens store is still a 4 a.m. store. So I went in early. I didn't log into the computer until 7. So I had done everything I possibly could to kind of prep. And then at 7 p.m., that's when I logged into the computer, knowing that would give me until like 9 p.m. Anyway, that afternoon, I was assigned this load at 3 p.m. And I even called the office, and they just would not change it. So I take that back. This was not the day that I ended up pulling back my schedule. This was the day I pushed it. So as opposed to coming in at 9 or coming in at 6:30, I came in at 8 because I knew that was a 4 a.m. store. That's what it was. I'm sorry, I'm not remembering correctly. I had to look at my notes. So because it was a 4 a.m. store, I had called the office. And when I called them at 3 p.m. after, because I went to sleep and then I wake up and go to sleep and wake up while I'm waiting for the assignment. And then I said, I'm going to be there at like midnight. And so can you please assign me something else? Because I don't want to end up sitting around for 4 hours. Put me on hold. They came back and the planner said to the dispatcher, we estimate that you'll be there between 2:30 and 3. I'm like, I disagree, but I'm not going to convince you. Fine, whatever. So change my arrival time until 8 p.m. Okay, so 8 p.m. Got there. I tell you, it was next level fast on every single store. I got to Central. They were fast. I was unloaded in 13 minutes, and they still temped everything. And it was the point where I was going so fast that he was still almost catching me. And this is because he was unloading and handing it off to someone else. He was so streamlined. the second he would go in there, he would reach not just for the pallet that he was in front of and pulling off there, he would reach to the pallet behind and stick the thermometer in that. So he'd pull off a pallet, he'd pull off another produce pallet, then he was going to grab the produce pallet that he was taking off and he would check the temperature. It had been sitting in there for a couple of minutes and it was going to have a good reading. And then when he got to the meat, as soon as I opened up the thing, he put put it on the pallet that he wasn't taking first. So he takes off the first meat, he grabs it, looks at the temperature, and then pulls that one off, and then I drop the bulkheads. I'm out of there in 13 minutes. It was awesome. I got to Clemson. They were also fast. I was unloaded in 16 minutes. And then Seneca was also fast. I was also unloaded in 16 minutes. And so I arrived at the Athens neighborhood market at 1:10 a.m. If I would have come in there at 7 p.m. as opposed to 8 p.m., I would have gotten there just after midnight, as I said I would. Office is not used to hustlers that know how to expedite and that help streamline the process so that you can go fast with people. Because the people that when I see them there, and it's the same people I see, they know that I like to go fast and they know that I'm not going to keep them. So most of them will go very fast for me. So when I got there at 1:10, I rang the doorbell in the back. Nobody answered the door. I knew that because I saw the lady sleeping in her car on the drive in, I knew that if I walked up the side, she was going to spot me and she was going to say, "Hey, can I help you?" and turn me around. So instead, I walked around the building the opposite side, the long way. And when I got to the office, I found one door that I could pry open and go through, closed it. And then there was one other door that I could pry open way on the other side and get in. As soon as I got in there, they were like, somebody looked at me and said, "Can I help you, sir?" I'm like, "Yeah, hey, do you have a lead that's in right now?" And they said, "Yeah, let me get him for you." And I said, "Hey, I had this really, I got Walmart goofed this dispatch up for me. I said, "I'm here like 3 hours early and I still have another run that I have to do." I said, "Is there any way I only have to drop 5 pallets? Is there any way that someone could unload me now so I don't have to wait for 3 hours?" And he said, "You know what? I got you." I was like, "Thank you so much. I really appreciate it." So he was actually fast. He didn't know where his thermometer was and his paperwork was and stuff like that. I helped him find the stuff he needed to, and we got done. And I was out of there and on the way. My second load was indeed to a Sam's Club. I got back to the office. I dropped my trailer. I picked up another trailer, got my paperwork, got everything situated, got out of there. And I tell you, I got to the Sam's Club and they were so disorganized. They didn't open the door by 4:30, so I ran around the building. And I looked in the window and I saw one employee way down the way. So I knocked on the window really hard, and that's when I realized there were 3 people hanging out, sitting down behind one of their little ad things. That's a thing. And because I knocked on the door so hard, they go springing up and they're taking a bad attitude. So they come over and this one guy opens up the door and just enough to peek through it at me. And I'm like, "Hey, I got your meat and produce." He's like, "Yeah, he's back there. He's coming back." And I'm like, "Yeah, do you have any idea? Cause it's already after 4:30. He's like, "He'll be back there. Just give him a minute." I'm like, "Any idea as to how long it's going to be? Because it's been over half an hour." "Just give him some time. He'll get back there." I'm like, completely useless. So frustrated. Anyway, he was like, "He'll be back there." Then he closes the door and then I have no choice but to go back around. There were other employees from Frito-Lay and Cheeto that were there trying to get in. I was first, but there were 3 ladies that were trying to get in because they had to do some work, and they did not open the door, not for any reason, until 4:52. At 4:52, the guy opened up the door and he was in a bad attitude. He just opened up the door. He was short. He was apparently alone there, but he just opened up the door and he just had a glare on him, and I tried greeting him and he didn't say a word. Anyway, it was about 3 minutes later that he opened up the door for me. I started being unloaded there just before 5. And I tell you, after this whole hassle, I was so frustrated. I did not help the process at all. I went and sat down and looked at my phone, which I normally don't do. I normally am like, "You want me to use the device or try to help streamline the process, or I'll call out numbers or something like that." I was so frustrated. This guy just had no personality. He was in a bad mood, and he had already wasted an hour of my time. So I just sat down and looked at my phone. First time I've done that too. And I don't like it, but he deserved it as far as I'm concerned, making me sit around and wait like that. And then just giving me a bad attitude for it. I understand if you're busy or whatever else, but just don't give me, don't be short or whatever, because there was a couple things I asked him and he was just like one word answer. I'm like, okay, well, whatever. I do not want to go back there again. I do not like that store. Anyway, it was 37 pallets, and he insisted on taking each stack of pallets, which this time of year there's watermelons. So there's like a pallet of watermelons in a cardboard thing, another pallet with watermelons on top. Normally what people do is they take off the watermelons, they put them on the outside, and then they will pick up 2 pallets of watermelons at a time. This guy here, he'd come in there, take one off, and then he'd run it. Then he would pick another one off, and then he ran it. And then after a while, he actually got with it. He started to pull out all the pallets of watermelons, and he started then stacking them 3 high and then running. I'm like, that was so different. I didn't say a word to him. I was like, you weren't running 1 anymore. Now you're running 3. Now you're actually being efficient. Anyway, so I was so happy he was triple stacking. There are so many watermelons, though. It is so annoying. Anyway, he was actually, once he got going, he was able to finish things. I got out of there just about 6 a.m. There was another refrigerated Walmart trailer that was wanting to pull in there. So right as I was pulling out, he was already sitting there on the side waiting. So he had if he would have arrived before me, I would have been stuck behind him. And with this whole fiasco. Anyway, interesting thing enough is on the way back, I saw an SCR system altered or fault detection warning pop up on the dash. And it ends up being that it's something that happens sometimes on it's like sometimes related to a fuse or something to do with the DEF system. But this thing popped up there and it said you're going to be operating in reduced power mode. So I was like, yikes, let's not do that. So anyway, I was like, I may not be in this truck tomorrow, so I got to fuel it up. So I went straight up to Buford. No. What is that? Brazelton. And I fueled up and then went back to the DC. And so by the time I dropped off the truck, it was just after 8 a.m. Anyway, that was that. The only thing I'll say to that is, if the Athens store did not open for me 3 hours early, I would have violated. It would have been 10 a.m. by the time that I got done with that store. So that's the reason why I can't do, if I don't get out of there by like 2, if I don't get out of there and get going down the way, I will tell them I can't do that run. I'm not going to be able to make it back in time. I hate doing it because I'm doing this for the money. But they need to plan better and send me out on either longer runs or send me out for a shorter one, then a longer one. When they send me out for a shorter one first, it takes like 3 hours, something like that, because the second team people are there. They're better staffed. They're able to, they're actually watching the loading docks. They're loading and unloading. So they're able to get me pretty quickly as a rule. And then send me out on the slower runs and the ones that I have to bang on the windows or the bang on the doors, that kind of stuff. And then they can come and get me. Those are a lot better to get second. That way I can also get done and I'm done with all my drops. And then I'll spend like 2 hours driving back. And then that's going to take me from like 3 until 5. So that's a much better use of my time. That way I'm not fighting in the dogs. And that way I'm very efficient. I like that much better. Friday. Greenville, then Taylor's, and then a second run of Macon. Greenville and Taylor's wasn't terrible. I'm still, again, not happy about the Sam's Club Macon. So I got up after starting my day at 8 on this particular occasion, on the previous day, which remember I could have finished by 10, but that would have been the very earliest I could have finished. I mean, I would have possibly violated. But I went home, and I saw that I got a 2-stop, and then I got the Macon run. Macon, 176 miles or whatever. I hate that run. But I ended up having Greenville and then Taylor's. So it's just 2 stops. So I got there early. I got there just after 6. And I was going to get in the truck and get out of there and try to get down the road just after 6:30. That way I could hopefully get out there and get back and get to the Sam's Club, in the 3 o'clock hour at the very latest. I don't mind sitting in the truck and waiting if it means, that I'm first in line. But it ends up being that when I got there, I started to pre-trip the truck and stuff like that. As soon as I was like pre-tripping the truck, I don't sit there with my phone on. I leave the phone in the truck while I'm pre-tripping and stuff like that. That way I concentrate on the truck. And I saw that I had one missed call and a voicemail. So I listened to the voicemail. It's the planner inside saying, "Hey, we need to change your load." I'm like, okay. So anyway, I then, as I'm listening to the voicemail, they called back again. So they apparently called back to back to back, And so anyway, I deleted the voicemail, answered, and they said, "Yeah, hey, we're changing your load." I'm like, "Yeah, I know. I'm coming back in." "Yep, come in." So I went back in, and they ended up changing me to a 2-stop, which was Duluth and then Lawrenceville. So this is the shorter first run. And I really, really was appreciative of that. So I got to Duluth. They had their staff. I was in and out of there in like less than 20 minutes. I was actually there in 20 minutes. I was out of there in 20 minutes, 23 minutes. And then I got to Lawrenceville and I was out of there in 24 minutes. This load is what's called a noise ordinance, which means that it's about to be late. If it arrives too late, then it's going to be fines on Martin and that kind of stuff. So they call that a noise ordinance. I don't know why. But I got out of there and got that done. And then I was assigned a second load that was Greenville, 2 different stops, and then Greer. So Greenville, Greer. Whole thing was like 240 miles. The thing was, when I got back to the office, it was not ready yet. They said it was like at 54% or something like that. And so I waited around a few minutes and then I said, "How is it now?" And they said, "It's still at 54. I'm like, "Do you have any other jobs that are ready to go now and that I could trade?" And he was like, "Let me see." And then he looks at me and kind of gives me this look like it's something I'm not going to like. And then he says, "I got a Cumming Jasper Dalton, North Georgia mountains. I love it up there." So I was like, "Yeah, give me that." So anyway, they, I was so thrilled about that. So I jumped out there, pre-tripped everything, got on the road. The biggest thing about this is that I knew I was going to arrive in Cumming probably around midnight, a little bit after, and I needed to expedite and speed them up because from Cumming to Jasper, it's about an hour drive, a little bit over an hour. And if I arrived after 2, I'd be stuck there for an hour waiting for their lunch to finish. So I wanted to try to get there by 1:30 if I could. I got there at 1:35 to the Jasper store. And there was a guy there that's this skinny, short dude that's always very fast. He's very nice, very fast. And so he already saw my ETA. So he had the door, the gate open for me. So I ran over there, ran in the door, and he was opening the gate up. So I was like, awesome. He had me completely unloaded and was about to push my 2 pallets back in there for my last stop when it hit 2:00 a.m. And that means he says, "Give me 1 second. I got to call everybody and I got to do a intercom and let them know that it's lunchtime." He stops what he's doing. He runs away for about 4 minutes, makes the intercom call, then comes back, pushes the last 2 things on there. I'm like, if only he would have been able to slide those up in there, I could have been out of there 4 minutes early, but it doesn't really matter. I was already making fine time. I wasn't going to be doing another run anyway. And from Jasper to Dalton, it's like another hour. Actually a little bit over an hour. But no, it's fine. I got all of it done. I got to the it's funny because the first stop I went to, the Cumming, they told me most of the time drivers don't help. They just normally stand there and look at things, sit there on their phone. I'm like, they don't help at all? Nope. So he was able to expedite and get me out of there and had no problem working a little faster for me because I was very involved. I got the stickers and stuff like that. One of the things I started doing also is I collect all the stickers. I will organize them into a meat and produce. So all the meat are in stickers are in one pile, all the produce are on the other. And then what I'll do is I'll label it meat and produce. And then what I will do is I will number them. So I'll number going down the meat or produce, whichever one's first. And then I will do the other. And that way I will have the total number of pallets there. And then at the very, very end, when they're signing the paperwork, I'll say, you see this right here? Your store gets 16 pallets. And I've numbered all your stickers, all 16 of them, you're complete. And I point that out to them. And I show them that I've done the work and that they have everything. That also means that I've been doing this now for a couple of weeks. I don't know if I've said this or not, but when I go back to those stores, they say, great. And they trust me to make sure that they have all their stuff, because they've told me that people will drop off. They'll come by there and let them just pull pallets off. And then when the stores screw up something or don't manage it properly, and then they close things back up thinking that they're done, they end up having to come back to drop off another pallet later. So they're like, yeah, we ended up, they had another pallet that was in the truck in the front or something like that. I'm like, you know what? That would be a red flag for me if I'm like, supposed to be a pallet here and there's not. Where is it? And I would start to wonder and start looking around. So I'd fish around for it a little bit, but not everyone's that way. So anyway, that Cummings store, I had told them I was trying to get to Jasper in time to get unloaded before their lunch break, and I was out of there just about 12:30, which was awesome. And then I arrived at Jasper at 1:35 and was done unloading the stuff just by 2. So he had, I told you he had finished unloading me and whatever, but had to do the intercom, and then I got to Dalton. And I arrived like 15 minutes after their 15 minutes after their lunchtime ended. So they were just getting back to the docks and they were starting to get things going. So that was like 3:15 a.m. They went to lunch from noon from 2 until 3. And it's good to note. I have to remember that store, because I'm sent there all the time, that they go to lunch from 2 until 3. But I got there, and it was 3:15, and they had people just returning from lunch. They were energized. They were ready to go, and there was only a few pallets left. So they had me unloaded in 13 minutes. Another quickie. When I got the loads that were good this week, everyone was really fast. When I got the Sam's Clubs, every single one of those Sam's Clubs screwed me over with something that was running slow. And I did not like that at all. I really wish I could get the office to not assign me any of those Sam's Clubs runs, because they always have me nervous. Every single day I get a Sam's Club, I'm scared. Or not scared. I'm nervous that I'm going to go into violation, because I'm just like, I feel it. I'm like, I'm going to be waiting there forever. And then finally they're going to, it makes me nervous every single time. So, I mean, if I can't get out of there and get to a Sam's early enough, I'll tell the office, I'm like, do you have anything else? Because I'm not going to be able to make that one in time. And sometimes they're like, you should be able to. I'm like, I should be able to, but I'm gonna end up having competition in the store, and they're like, we'll kick them out. Your priority. I'm like, yeah, it's still going to take them an hour and a half to get me unloaded, and that's if they start at 4. And if and it's like 5:30 or whatever by the time I get out of there, and it's an hour and a half away, doesn't leave me much time for leeway. That's because, especially with traffic and stuff. So anyway, that was this week. Wild week. But there you go. That's the latest on what happened on this Walmart dedicated account this week. I'm going to sleep tonight. I'm going to see what they assign me, and I guarantee it's going to be some whack job. But I'm hoping that because it's a weekend, there's not going to be traffic. Today's technically a Saturday, so I'll be starting back, and I'll be finishing my day on Sunday morning. Normally, you would think Sunday mornings, because a lot of the loading docks, it says that they have office hours for Monday through Friday and then Saturday only hours. But there's people that show up there on Sunday, so they're able to unload Sunday for other people too. I really wish that we were the only ones that were able to unload on Sunday, or that there were certain dedicated times that we're allowed to use the docks that no one else is, like me in the middle of the night. That'd be really nice if it was that way in the morning, but it's not. So anyway, There you go. That's the latest. Thanks for watching.